I suppose if one of these teams were to lose out and one of those teams were to win out, then maybe it's possible. So yeah, this is nonetheless a very important matchup for seeding in the playoffs. And, there's always a little bit of division rivalry. Never want to lose to a divisional opponent. And here, you'll find that the Chargers are actually favored in this game. They have a line of -145, and 61% of people are picking them as per the ESPN Pick'em games. And I'm going to go with the underdog here. I don't really think of them as the underdog. The 9-5 Broncos, they have the better record, but they're not favored to win, and they're not being picked. But I just think that the Denver Broncos have been a better team as of late. If we take a look at the last 4 games for each of these two teams, the Broncos are 4-0 in that span. Not necessarily playing the best of teams. They played the Raiders, they played the Browns, they played last week the Colts. But in that span, they are playing very good football. Oh, they played the Falcons. The Falcons are a winning team. And they're scoring. Their offense is clicking at a much better rate than it was earlier in the season. I think early on in the season, their defense was doing a lot of the brunt work, keeping them in games, and they were close. But recently, their offense has found a new rhythm, and I feel like that is key because the Chargers, on the other hand, you take a look at their last 4 games, they have not been good. They're 1-3 in their last 4, playing some hard teams, but they're coming off of probably the most embarrassing loss of their season thus far against the Buccaneers, where they lost 40-17, and they've actually scored 17 in their last 3 matchups. It was 17 against the Chiefs, 17 against the Buccaneers, 17 the week before that. Who was it? Against the Falcons, and then 23 against the Ravens. So in their last 4 games, they're averaging just over 18 points, whereas the Broncos are averaging, let's see, 31 plus 41 is 72. Give it another 29, that's 101, and then 38. So 139 points over the last 4. That's what? Right around 34 points per game in their last 4 matchups. So, as you can see, they're doubling up. They're quite literally doubling up the Chargers in terms of offensive production. And the Chargers, I would say that they have great defense, but you just allowed the Buccaneers to score 40 on you. So, I can't see how, to me, I feel like the Broncos are a hotter team. They're playing much better offense. The Chargers, yes, they do have that one win against the Falcons where they held them to 13 points. But the Broncos, the last time they scored, I guess it was against the Chiefs 5 weeks ago. 5 weeks ago was the last time that they scored enough. They scored as little as the Chargers have in this stretch. And I just think that, the Broncos will find a way to score at least 2 touchdowns, maybe even a 3rd touchdown, and the Chargers defense. It's hard to say that they're going to get stops after last week. So, all things considered, I think that the Broncos, they moved to 10-5 after a victory on Thursday Night Football. The Chargers, a little bit of a worrisome stretch. After this stretch, they go from 7-4 to 8-6. They might fall to 8-7. I don't think they're really at risk, but you do have to watch out for, I'd say the Bengals have the best shot. I was giving the Dolphins a pretty good shot, but last week they did not deliver against the Texans. So right now, I think that the Chargers' biggest threat would be the Bengals, but we'll see. Anywho, after that, we move into the Saturday slate. Yes, that is right. Week 16, we have Saturday games now. It's a triple header. Oh no, sorry, I'm thinking of the following week. We have a double header on Saturday. Our first of the 2 games is going to be a matchup between the 9-5 Houston Texans and the 13-1 Kansas City Chiefs. Once again, gonna go with the Chiefs in this one. It is, the Texans, they get, I will say that they impressed me last week. I didn't think that their defense would be that top-notch. Every once in a while, they'll come out, they'll play a game that is a little bit better than what I expect. Sometimes they'll come out and they'll play worse than I expect. I did think that the Dolphins were going to beat them last week, so props to the Texans for coming out and defending their right as a playoff team in this year's playoff picture. 9-5 is a very respectable record, but the Chiefs are just next level. They're coming off a 2-score win. One of the very few this season. They actually were able to take down the Browns with multiple scores, which is not something that I expected. I just thought it would be one score for the sake of the Chiefs game script, but yeah, they coming off of a more impressive victory. Both teams coming off of impressive victories, just in different ways. But ultimately, I do think that the Chiefs are playing at a very high level. That's tough to beat. Just crunch time execution is great, and I will say that the Chiefs are probably the luckiest team in football, and I don't mean that as a diss. I just think that, the luck has been in their favor this year. Not all of those one-score games were pure execution. Some of them were just luck, bad luck to the other team. There was a stat I saw recently, and it was teams with the highest and lowest opponent kicking percentage, and at the bottom of the list, I think it was the Falcons. The Falcons, 97% of opponent kicks are converted against them, and with the Chiefs, they were number 1 with an opponent kicking percentage of 76%. And yeah, they've blocked a couple kicks this year, but it just means that people slip and miss kicks against them, and that's not necessarily pressure. That's just bad luck. So yeah, even though the Texans got a good win last week, the Chiefs, they are the team to beat. They will continue to be the team to beat. Buffalo was a good team that matched up against them well. I don't know. I don't think that the Texans are all that this year. If things had panned out a little differently, if they were maybe 11-3, then I would be picking them. But no, 9-5, I'm not as moved by the Texans this year. I do think that the Chiefs will win this game. Next up, our second Saturday game, we've got the 10-4 Pittsburgh Steelers taking on the 9-5 Baltimore Ravens in, once again, a divisional matchup. This one is pretty key as well, because actually this one's probably more important than the Thursday night game, because yes, while the Ravens are in the wildcard playoff hunt, if they win this game, they move to a record of 10-5. The Steelers move to a record of 10-5, and I don't know quite who would own the tiebreaker since they'd be 1-1 against each other, but this is the Ravens' only chance to slip into the number 1 spot for that division, to be the division leader. So there's a lot on the line for the Ravens in this game. Steelers last week coming off of one of their few losses this season against a very, very good Philadelphia Eagles team. I think that they couldn't really get it going, and they have been short-handed. Ooh, I guess that's something to consider. Okay, I'll explain my thinking, but yes, they have been without George Pickens for the last couple outings. No George Pickens. I feel like their offense stalled a bit last week against the Eagles as well. The Ravens, on the other hand, coming off of a very convincing victory over the New York Giants. They were favored at negative 1,800 odds, and they did convert. They won by 3 scores, I believe it was. So, huge victory for the Ravens. Lamar played superb, as he does from time to time. And in this game, initially, I'd pick the Steelers. And the rationale behind that is Lamar Jackson has really struggled against the Steelers so far in his career. He has an overall record of 1-5 against the Steelers. In those games, he has thrown 5 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. And the only and last time that he beat the Steelers was in 2019. That's pre-pandemic, before COVID-19 even existed. So, the Steelers have owned Lamar Jackson in the last 4 years, and I feel like that is a trend that could continue. It's really hard to say, just because the Steelers are so well coached, and I think that they do the best job against Lamar of any team at dismantling him, but they are also shorthanded, and that's something to consider. I was going to pick the Steelers, but with George Pickens out, I feel like their wide receiver Williams. Who else? Let me see what their box score looked like last week. Because I know that, Russell Wilson, 14 of 22 for 128 yards and a touchdown. Now, that is against an Eagles secondary that is absolutely locked down this year. And, Najee, 6 carries for only 14 yards. But your leading receiver was Calvin Austin with 5 catches for 65 yards. Then Pat Freiermuth with 3 catches. And then you had Ben Skowronek, Mike Williams, Van Jefferson. It's really, once you lose Pickens, it is an unimpressive group. I will say that. And the Ravens, they have better weapons. It's not often that they have better weapons, but they definitely do have better weapons than the Steelers. At running back, they have Derrick Henry. That's better. At wide receiver, you got Zay Flowers or Rashad Bateman. That's better than this group for sure, with Pickens out. At tight end, you've got Mark Andrews. I would say even with his down year, still better than Pat Freiermuth. And then, quarterback's not a comparison. So, offensively in every way, I do think that the Baltimore Ravens are better. It does come down to defense, though. And defensively, I would say that the Steelers are pretty solid. But they weren't able to capitalize last week with the turnovers that they did produce. They produced some very good turnovers, but their offense was so bad that they just couldn't do anything with it. Jalen Hurts in the first quarter fumbles the ball. They do nothing with it. They punt on that punt. The Eagles fumble the ball, and I think the Steelers offense loses a yard, and then they kick the field goal. So, as good as their defense is, I think without Pickens, their offense is honestly worse. So, with that being said, I'm going to change this. I'm going to go with the Ravens. I think that the Ravens will win this game. Coming off a high moral victory, they played really well. I think that they're better offensively. Defensively, they're not that great. But I don't think that the Steelers, in their current form, you need to limit all that much. Your offense just needs to trump their defense. And the Eagles were able to do it. And I do think that the Ravens and Eagles offensively are some of the best in the league. So I'll go with the Ravens here. I have convinced myself of it. Anywho, after that, we move into our Sunday slate of football games. First up is a matchup between the 3-11 Cleveland Browns and the 6-8 Cincinnati Bengals. Now, for the sake of consistency, since I brought up Lamar Jackson's record against a divisional opponent, I will do the same for Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow does not have a track record of success against the Browns. He is 2-5 against the Browns in his overall career. He has not necessarily done a great job against them, even in the years where they weren't that great. However, one of those 2 wins against the Browns did come earlier this year, so we're not looking back to like 2019 or anything like that. And number 2, the Browns are starting Dorian Thompson-Robinson. I think that's good enough. I think that's good enough justification to believe that the Cincinnati Bengals will be better than the Browns. I think that Jameis Winston does give you like a huge level of volatility. Obviously, last week he didn't play that great against the Chiefs. He threw for 2 or 3 picks, no touchdowns. But he'll also give you 5 touchdown days. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, I think that maybe he'll give you 1 on the ground, maybe he'll give you 1 through the air. But the Bengals' offense is, I think, leagues beyond this. You do need a guy like like Jameis Winston, who is going to make mistakes, but can actually power your offense. I feel like the entire offense is downgraded with DTR in. The running game is whatever, but Jerry Jeudy is top 5 in receiving yards on the year. That's because of Jameis Winston. You have, Cedric Tillman had that run where he was doing pretty well. David Njoku is like a sure start fantasy wide receiver when Winston is in. You have all these things that are going for you when you play him. And I feel like the decision to bench him is, he makes a lot of mistakes, and maybe you want to set a precedent, but I would rather have a super volatile offense than a stagnant one. And for the Bengals, it just, don't lose to DTR, man. Don't do it. feel like you're better than this. You did make a decent number of turnovers against the Titans, and the Titans somehow not somehow, they out-turnovered you because Will Levis is playing quarterback for them, but just play a little bit more clean, and you should have an easy win. And then, after that, we've got a matchup between the 2-12 New York Giants and the 7-7 Atlanta Falcons. This game will be interesting. Not because I think that the Giants have a chance, but because Atlanta has announced that they're benching Kirk Cousins in favor of their first-round draft pick, Michael Penix Jr. That was announced a few days ago. This comes after an abysmal stretch of games by Kirk Cousins, where the team went 1-4. He had a 4-game stretch where they lost all 4 games. He threw 0 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Even in the game against the Raiders, it was pretty close until the end because Atlanta's offense just wasn't very good. A lot of that does revolve around Kirk Cousins. So I've seen a lot of people be pretty happy with this move, and I'm interested. I'm for sure interested to see how Michael Penix Jr. plays in this game. We haven't seen very much from him at all. If it's Giants, I think like this is a great first matchup for him because they are so dysfunctional on offense right now. I actually don't know who's even starting for them. Last week, I think they had a couple guys take snaps. Giants versus Ravens. What was it? Tim Boyle. Yeah, Tim Boyle taking snaps for them. And I think I saw a stat that said Tim Boyle has never won a game in which he has taken a snap for. So, that's pretty bad. That's pretty bad. If you have to turn to Tim Boyle, and Tim Boyle has literally never won a game, this should be a gimme win for the Falcons, even with Michael Penix Jr. making his debut. Don't mess it up. You've got a great thing going for you. If you lose this game, Michael Penix Jr., the city of Atlanta, will be so upset. But I think this is a very easy trial run test game for him. And there's only 3 games left, so better shape up if you want to take that spot back from the Buccaneers. Alright, after that we have another divisional matchup between the 12-2 Detroit Lions and the 4-10 Chicago Bears. Now the Lions last week struggling a bit against the Bills, more so on the defensive end, I would say. Defensively, they allowed a whopping 44 points. I think it was like either 44, 42, 48, 42. It was a high-scoring affair. There were a lot of points being scored in that game. That being said, the Lions' offense played pretty well. Jared Goff, like 400 yards, 5 touchdowns. He balled out. He did his best. Amon-Ra had a very big day. Yes, the Lions suffering from a lot of injuries, losing David Montgomery potentially for the rest of the season, it looks like. And the injuries are piling up mostly on the defensive end, but it looks like the offense now as well, so it is a point of concern. But luckily, you are playing against the Chicago Bears, who have lost their last 8 games straight. They don't seem to be any sort of threat. Yes, every once in a while, they will score a couple touchdowns, but usually not in threatening times. It's more like garbage time play. Against the Vikings, they didn't do anything that crazy. And the Lions, I think, even with as battered and bruised as their defense is, they can limit the Chicago Bears offense, and the Bears defense not quite good enough to stop this juggernaut offense of the Lions. So I'm going to go with the Lions victory here, climbing to 13-2, staying ahead in this division, while the Bears rack up another loss. Next, after that, we have another divisional matchup between the 3-11 Tennessee Titans and the 6-8 Indianapolis Colts. The Titans, a bit of a mess. Last week, Will Levis, with his ex-girlfriend in attendance. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of the clip of Will Levis on draft night. He has this girl wrapped around his arm, and is true at all, but the story goes that, like, Will Levis, a lot of people thought that he might get drafted in the first round, and then he obviously didn't. He slipped to the second, I believe it was, and then his girlfriend left him, and people say it's like, oh, because he didn't get drafted in the first round, and then supposedly last week his girlfriend was in attendance at the game, his ex-girlfriend at this point, and then Will Levis threw 3 interceptions and lost a fumble, just had an absolutely horrendous performance, and yeah, sorry to air out your dirty laundry, Will Levis, but he, I think, is benched. It's going to be Mason Rudolph in this game against the Colts. I don't know which team had the most embarrassing, stupid loss last week. The Titans, yes, they did turn the ball over something like 6 times, but they were still somewhat in it. So by their standards, I would say they played like average to maybe above average. The Colts, on the other hand, they had a lead in this game. They really could have taken a giant lead against the Broncos, and then Jonathan Taylor fumbles, and the Deshaun Jackson fumble where you're about to cross the goal line, errantly drop the football, so you didn't cross the plane, and then the football runs through the back of the end zone. It's a touchback, and that was the changing point. Not only did they lose points on that, but then they threw a pick six, a really, really bad pick six, and yeah, the Colts, they've just been silly. They're very mistake prone. I think that the Titans are similar. At the end of the day, I do think that the Colts are a better team. They'll get the win here. They will move to 7-8. Titans, yeah, I guess they could play spoiler, but your solution is not anywhere in Tennessee, and unless you want to go get someone in free agency, lose these games. Do not try and win these games. Like, for the sake of your franchise, you need to try and get a quarterback. Hopefully, you can still have a shot at someone nice. There are a lot of 3-win teams in the league this year. I don't know where exactly the Titans fall, but the draft is a great bet. Like, even if you don't want a quarterback, trade your picks, trade back for more draft stock, improve your team. There's a lot you can improve. So, I would encourage the Titans to tank, and for the Colts, see what you can do. To win here, you're at 7-8. Try and finish, maybe with a winning record, see. But yeah. Anywho, after that, we've got a matchup between the 8-6 LA Rams against the 4-10 New York Jets. This is on Sunday. Yeah. Should be. I don't know what I was gonna say. I feel like the Rams are gonna win this game. The Jets last week taking it toe-to-toe with the Jacksonville Jaguars, being led by Mac Jones. I feel like the Jets have really shown the caliber of team that they are. They've lost to the Patriots. They nearly lost to the Jaguars. They have 4 wins on the year. They really are not a good team. Now, Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers did look good last week. That connection was strong, but imagine if you had 2 of those connections and everyone was younger, and that's basically what the Rams have. Matthew Stafford to Cooper Kupp, Matthew Stafford to Puka Nacua. The Rams they're one of the hottest teams since the return of their wide receiver group from injuries. I think they're on a 7-2 stretch. They're absolutely picking up steam after starting off 1-5, 1-4 on the year. And they look like they are probably going to take this division. So I'm expecting them to go into New York this week and get another victory, extend their lead on the division. And it's going to be very interesting to see that week 18 matchup against the Seahawks, because could determine who goes in. After that, we have a matchup between the 12-2 Philadelphia Eagles and the 9-5 Washington Commanders. Another divisional game that has a lot on the line. The Commanders at the moment sitting at 9-5. They are the 7th seed in these. Yeah, they're the 7th seed because you have the Vikings at 11-2. You have the Packers at, I think, 10-4, and then the Commanders at 9-5. They are currently also will help them get an easier matchup in the playoffs if they're able to win this game, because it's like their only shot to climb out of the bottom 7th seed. But do I think they're going to do it? Personally, I don't think so. I think that the Eagles have a very well-rounded roster. Defensively, they have shown their prowess. 2 weeks ago, limiting the Ravens to a very small amount. Last week, against like an injured Steelers offense, but still, they stymied them completely offensively. The Eagles offense, Saquon, most likely going to win Offensive Player of the Year. He has that, still having an amazing campaign. Last week, we also saw Jalen Hurts and that A.J. Brown connection very strong. Devontae Smith very strong. So, offense firing in, I'd say, pretty much all cylinders. Defense looking pretty great. The Commanders, they've been good, but I don't know if they've been this good. This is their perfect game in order to win a game in the playoffs. You've had a great season, you've had a great turnaround season, but to win a playoff game, you're going to have to win this week, I think. Because most likely this is going to end up being your playoff matchup, unless some other stuff happens. But yeah, now's your time to shine. So I'm excited to see it, but I do think that the Eagles will win this game. Anywho, after that we have a matchup between the 7-7 Arizona Cardinals and the 3-11 Carolina Panthers. Panthers disappointing last week, and I thought that they had a solid shot of winning that game against the Cowboys, and they did not perform very well at all. Bryce Young described as having a regression game by the Red Zone commentators, and yeah, I would have to agree. He had an opportunity, did not take full advantage of it. I felt like the Cowboys were sledding. Cooper Rush got a lot of flack for his performance against the Bengals, but a big bounce back from him. And yeah, the Panthers kind of on the low again. Not gonna pick them to beat this Cardinals team. The Cardinals, they went to New England, or they played against New England. I don't remember how the game was played. Had it up on Red Zone, so I was paying that much attention to the stadium. But Cardinals, they won handily, played pretty well, and I think that this is a game where the Cardinals are just a better team in a lot of ways. The Panthers, yes, I could come up with a way that they could beat the Cowboys. I don't really see any reason for the Panthers to come out with a victory here. They're just not that good of a team. They've been close. They've been close in a lot of weeks, but they weren't close at all last week. And the Cardinals, they won in kind of a blowout. So going with the Cardinals here to move to 8-7, still be in the hunt for this NFC West. And then we've got the Minnesota Vikings, the 12-2 Minnesota Vikings taking on the 8-6 Seattle Seahawks. That will be an interesting game. The Seahawks, they just recently came up with a loss against the Green Bay Packers, a game in which I don't think that they played that amazing. And now they have an even tougher test. You couldn't beat the Packers, now you had to go against the Vikings. Vikings had 12-2, only, they're not even a game back. They're tied with the Lions. They just don't own the tiebreaker. The Seahawks, they're playing for their livelihood. Last week's loss was tough, but if you lose this week, things are grim. Right now, you have the same record as the Rams. If you lose this week and the Rams win, they have a very good shot of taking it. If you somehow get the upset victory here, you're still in the running. You could definitely have it. But in all likelihood, the Cardinals are winning this week, and the Rams are winning this week. So if the Seahawks lose, it might be over for them. It might really be done so. So I'd like to see them play with urgency without being panicked. Let's see if their O-line can do anything for them. And yeah, the Vikings, I think that their defense is going to be just swarming that Seattle D-line is not good. Vikings D-line, I think, will smother Geno Smith, not give him a lot of time, and Vikings offensively. It depends on the week, but they did a pretty good job this week. They did a fantastic job 2 weeks ago, and I don't think that the Seattle defense is anything that great to rave about. So I'm going to give it to the Vikings in this one. After that, we have a matchup between the Buffalo Bills and the New England Patriots. They have opposite records. Patriots at 3-11, Bills at 11-3. I think that this one is a wash. Yeah, the Bills they've put up 40 in back-to-back weeks. The Patriots have not put up more than 30 in any game this year. The Patriots against the Cardinals looked pretty bad. It's not their year. They're not really meant to be winning a ton of games. There've been a couple close games that they have lost. They could have beat the Colts. They could have beaten the Seahawks. There are a couple games there that they could have won, and they could be slightly better than they are. But even then, the Patriots are far from a good team. And the Bills, yeah, they're favored at -1,000 for a good reason. I think that they get a good, another big win here. And I would like to see the Patriots try and beat, a lot of people. They have compared Drake May in his draft comparison to Josh Allen. They've got somewhat similar build. Obviously, they're like athletic white quarterbacks. They're going to get compared. Both larger frames and can run with the ball pretty well. And Drake May does have a little bit of that athleticism when it comes to passing as well, but obviously a lot less polished, a lot rougher, and his surrounding cast sucks. But it just takes time. Josh Allen wasn't a perfect product when he came out either. It did take 2 years to develop him, and I feel like Drake May has played pretty well. So I'm not gonna knock Drake May at all. He's been doing well. Just the Patriots as a team, not good, and the Bills as a team, even better than I could have imagined. So I'll give the Bills this one once again. And then after that, we've got the 3-11 Jacksonville Jaguars taking on the 2-12 Las Vegas Raiders. Based on their performances last week, I do think that Jacksonville is a much better offense. The Raiders, they were playing Desmond Ridder, and against the Falcons, they couldn't pull it out. I think they only scored like 12 points. The Jaguars, on the other hand, they scored a lot, 30, I think, against the Jets, and offensively, they had some people go off. Brendan Strange got 11 passes. You've got Brian Thomas Jr. with the Giant game, and I will say I do think that Mac Jones is a lot better of a quarterback than Desmond Ridder. So, in my mind, if the Jacksonville Jaguars win this game, I think they also have more motivation to win games, just because, you just signed Trevor Lawrence to that big deal. I do think that he is your franchise guy. You're not playing for a quarterback. Obviously, you can play for a high draft pick, but the Raiders really have no reason to win. You are so close to the end of the season, and you fall back so far in the draft. If you win any of these games, just continue losing. And yeah, then we have a very interesting matchup between the 6-8 San Francisco 49ers and the 6-8 Miami Dolphins. This one I think is interesting because I don't remember the last time I've seen a matchup in which both teams had negative odds. Right now, 53% of people are picking the 49ers to win over the Dolphins, and then the line on the 49ers is -110, so -110. The Dolphins have the exact same line, -110, so neither one of these teams can you place money and make more. In return, you have to play $110 to win back 100 for both teams. I don't know the last time I have seen that for a football game, so a very even matchup between these two. Even the audience is split on it. It's really hard to say, in my opinion. I feel like the Dolphins, I expected them to win last week, and they did go up against a good team, and get shut down quite a bit. So that ruined their playoff chances. I'm sure they're somewhat defeated. They're still somewhat in the hunt. The 49ers, I can't really say the same. I mean, it would be 49ers losing that game against a divisional opponent, scoring 6 points. You could say it's because there was a light drizzle, but it's truly a bad offensive performance. Both teams, such great offense last year, and not nearly at the same level this year. I don't know. I'm kind of leaning 49ers, but they are also, they're kind of thin. Like, they've lost CMC, and then they lost Elijah Mitchell, and then they lost Jordan Mason, and then they lost Isaac Rendo. He's not going to be playing in this game. So now you're putting up, I think it's Patrick Taylor Jr. and, wide receiver core all banged up. You've got defensive injuries, offensive injuries. Dolphins, on the other hand, kind of just unimpressive. If I really think about it, in terms of disappointing losses, it's got to be 49ers with the more disappointing loss last week. And the Dolphins, they're playing at home. I'm going to go with the Dolphins here. Battle of mid, definitely battle of mid. But the Dolphins, I think they have a lot going for them. They also can blame Tua's concussion. I feel like the 49ers as a whole have just been a letdown. Whereas the Dolphins, most of their season's woes comes off of just the one Tua injury. For the rest of the season, they've been decent. And yeah, I'm going to go with the Dolphins getting the victory here. After that, we move into Sunday Night Football. There's a matchup between the 8-6 Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the 6-8 Dallas Cowboys. Now, surprisingly enough, the Cowboys actually do have a path to the playoffs that exists. It is filled with asterisks. There are all these things that need to happen. They have to win out. They need all these other teams to lose out, and they need a very specific combination of things to happen, like the Falcons to win the South at a very specific record. All these things. That being said, I don't think it's in their best interest to make the playoffs. I don't think that they would do anything if they were to make it. What good is lowering your draft stock to get bounced in the first round of the playoffs again? You lost as, the 2 seed last year. You'll lose as the 7 seed this year. This is not an impressive team. The Bucs, on the other hand, they have things to play for. 8-6. You're at the top of your division. People didn't expect that, even though you were the best team in your division last year. You got discounted. So you have that underdog story. There's also Mike Evans' record on the line. He needs 251 yards to maintain his 1,000-yard season record. He's had 1,000 yards in every season for 10 seasons straight. He needs one more to tie Jerry Rice for the most ever. Baker Mayfield has said that he himself is thinking about it more than Mike Evans is. And I think those two factors aren't enough. The Bucs last week, taking on a playoff team, they looked phenomenal. They played great. They have responded to their offensive injuries so much better than I was expecting. So, shout out to the Bucs. I think that they go to AT&T Stadium. They win this game. The Cowboys, yeah, you got a nice victory last week against the Panthers, but that was the worst in this division. Now you're going to play the best in this division. I don't think that, the Cowboys defense is going to be able to do a good job enough to contain the Bucs offense. And yeah, give me the Bucs. And finally, you've got a matchup between the 5-9 New Orleans Saints and the 10-4 Green Bay Packers. Should be easy enough for the Packers to win this. The Saints rolled out last week with, who was it? It's the, for lack of a better word, the fruity one. He's Jake Hayner, something like that. He has a lot of very weird media day photos. Not weird, funny, silly. But in a traditional sense, they're weird. Like, usually media day photos aren't so sassy, zesty. And, yeah, he didn't finish the game. It was Spencer Rattler. They were trying to mount a comeback against the Commanders. They got the touchdown. They went for the 2-point conversion. And, yeah, they just missed on it. So the Commanders held on. The Packers, on the other hand, playing a playoff team, they looked pretty good. They had a good showing against the Seahawks. I think in all ways the Packers are better. So yeah, I'll take the Packers here. No real explanation needed. So yeah, with that, we have all of our week 16 predictions made. I'll go through all of them one more time just for convenience. Thursday night, I've got the Broncos over the Chargers. Saturday, I have the Chiefs over the Texans and the Ravens over the Steelers. Then on Sunday, I have the Bengals over the Browns, the Falcons over the Giants, the Lions over the Bears, the Colts over the Titans, the Rams over the Jets, the Eagles over the Commanders, Cardinals over the Panthers, the Vikings over the Seahawks, the Bills over the Patriots, Jaguars over the Raiders, Dolphins over the Niners, the Buccaneers over the Cowboys, and on Monday, the Packers over the Saints. So, that is my full slate of predictions. If you're wondering how I did last week, I went pretty well. I went 12-4, one of my better weeks. So I'm hoping to keep that going with this last stretch of games. We've got week 16, 17, and 18. So winding down to the end of the year, and I'm almost at 66% on my picks. If you're wondering, so far on this season, I'm at 141 to 74 in terms of my selections. So if I can bring the wins just a bit higher, then I can double up my wins to my losses, and I'll be pretty happy with that. I did miss out a couple weeks ago in the middle of, I think it was like the week before finals. I didn't put all of my picks in, so I missed out on some very easy ones, and that is my undoing. So this is not complete. I'm definitely missing, like, I want to say 6 games out of the total. And yeah, that's my own bad. But that's it for this video. As always, thank you for watching. If you enjoy content like this, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know what other kinds of videos you want me to do. I know that I got a comment under the last video talking about doing the it was said to be a preview video. I think we're talking about the recap video, where I recap all the games before I do the fantasy stuff. And yeah, I'll try to do that, where I have one video where I recap the games, I have one video where I recap fantasy, and then I'll move on to predictions. I also got a comment saying that I should do more betting videos, and that is on my mind. I will be doing that in the playoffs for sure. It's just easier to research. There's fewer games, there's more information available, there's more time, because it's at the beginning of the quarter rather than the end of the quarter. All in all, I think it's more fun to bet on the playoffs, so that's when I tune in more so for betting. But that will occur. I might do a prize picks video before that, just recapping some of the changes that I like, that I don't like, why I don't necessarily bet as much anymore. So yeah, that's on the horizon, and if there's anything else, let me know. I will try my best to address it. I definitely do have a little bit more time in this next couple weeks compared